Okay, so you should now have answered that 2-mark question, marked question 18. So you can now mark your answer based on this mark scheme response. For the first mark, you need to just give that overall phrase that peer review is a quality control process. That's 1 mark. And then for the second mark, it involves research being assessed by experts in the field before it is published. Now you probably haven't written that bit in brackets, before it is published, but often they do want you to point that out, that this is something that happens at that point. So can you add that onto your answer if you didn't say it already? Okay, now time for the second question. If you just scroll down from the one you've just done. Question 19 is explain why peer review is important in psychological research, for 5 marks. So if you now pause the video here and have a go at that on your own, you should be talking about the various purposes of peer review. See if you can remember any of the key terms from that mnemonic. Okay, so you can now mark your own answer based on these suggestions. First of all, give yourself 1 mark if you've included each of these purposes. 1 is to ensure that the research that gets published is of high quality, valid, accurate, relevant. You wouldn't necessarily need to include all of these terms at the end of the sentence here, but definitely I would include a couple of them. Another mark for saying it's to prevent flawed or fraudulent research from being published. 3rd mark, to help allocate funding. And 4th mark, to determine the research rating given to universities. So that's 4 marks there. For the 5th mark, you need to elaborate on 1 or more of these. For example, to prevent research where the findings have been plagiarised or fabricated. That's just elaborating on what fraudulent means. So you could add that as a 5th mark when you've said that point there. Or where you've said to help allocate funding. If you've added that reviews help funding bodies like charities to decide what kind of research is worthwhile to fund, that would get another mark. Or about the last point, you could say that universities with high ratings from peer review are more likely to attract future funding. So just make sure that you've got at least 1 of those extra points from this slide, and then you've got enough for 5 marks. Right, we're now up to the final bit of information you need on peer review, which is evaluation. So if you turn to page 67, you'll find 3 criticisms of the peer review process. So if I just show you what that looks like. It's this page here. Even though peer review is meant to ensure the validity of research that gets published, certain features of the process are open to criticism. So what I'd like you to do is just read through these 3 points on your own. And then once you've done that, I have some questions for you on this slide. So pause the video while you read through those criticisms, and then when you're ready, resume the video and I'm going to ask you some questions about it. You could jot down your answers on a separate bit of paper. This is just to check that you've understood that information. Okay, so hopefully now you've read through page 67. Here are your questions. Question 1. What sort of research is unfairly rejected due to publication bias? 2. Why might peer review slow down scientific discovery? 3. Name 2 universities whose research is more likely to be published. And 4. It says that valid research is sometimes overlooked because it's conducted at less prestigious universities. What is the term for this problem? So just pause here while you jot down your answers to those questions and try and do so without looking back at page 67 if you can. Okay, so at this stage you should have had a chance to pause and answer those questions. So we'll just go through the answers. Question 1, what sort of research is unfairly rejected due to publication bias? So it says here that research that does not support a hypothesis is often ignored and disregarded. So it's research that has found negative results, that has not supported their hypothesis. That's often disregarded and not published. Question 2, why might peer review actually slow down scientific discovery? So this is covered in this second point here, and it mentions that reviewers tend to be critical of research that contradicts their own views, and that means that new and innovative research can be ignored. So if we're not finding out about new and innovative research, then scientific discovery might be slowed down. 3, name 2 universities whose research is more likely to be published. So that's covered in this last point here. Best examples, if we're talking about UK universities, would be Oxford and Cambridge. And this issue that research covered at less prestigious universities is often overlooked. The term for that problem is institution bias. So that concludes everything that you need to know on peer review.